let's take a look at what the product development approach typically involves. Product development really is a six-step process. First, there is idea generation. All right, we think up of an idea. Next, we screen the idea. Next, we develop a concept for the idea. Then we go ahead and analyze the idea. Then we go ahead and test the idea. And we go ahead and implement the idea. This is the six-step process of product development. Now, let's take a look at how product development relates to benefits. Okay? Step one is determining what kind of product we're trying to develop. Now, when developing a benefits product, let's keep in mind that we're trying to develop a product that will maximize the return on investment specifically on human capital. Now, the investment in human capital is similar to every other capital expense. Okay, a company invests in technology, they invest in computers, they invest in technology. A company invests in communications, a phone system, a conferencing system. Similarly, a company invests in people. More specifically, they invest in knowledge, talent, and skill. Now, that's the investment. Okay, that's what they're investing in. Now, the return on investment would be, what does the business get in exchange for their investment? Okay, before we go into the return on investment of employees, let's just take a brief overview of, let's just take a quick look at the equation for the return on investment equation. Okay, let's say that the business gets in return for their investment a piece of property. Okay, what did that piece of property cost them? Okay, how much is that piece of property worth? So there's the cost, and then the value of the property, the return. How much money is in their bank now because they have that piece of property? We go ahead and divide the return less the cost, divided by the cost, and that will give us the percentage, the return on investment. Now, let's take a look at the return on investment for employees. Okay? The costs, the investment in employees, or the costs related to investing in employees, are split in two categories. There are the hard costs and the soft costs. The hard costs typically include recruiting expenses, the salary, taxes, payroll taxes, and the expense of benefits. The soft cost will include administrative costs like HR, payroll processing, office space, office equipment, and opportunity costs, which this typically include things like cheaper hires that we could have gotten, or limitations that the business might be willing to overlook for this specific hire. These are all the costs. This is the total dollar amount that a business invests in employees. In other words, once we put down whatever the recruiting expense is, whatever the salary is, once we put that all down, that would be the dollar amount that a company invests in employees. Now, the return that the company gets is knowledge, talent, and skill. But how do we quantify what this is worth? If we wanted to tell our friends that by hiring John Doe, our company now has another X amount of value in our bank account. Okay, by getting John Doe's knowledge, talent, and skill, how much more did we get? How do we quantify what that's worth? How do we quantify the value of these intangible assets? the intangible assets of knowledge, talent, and skill. So the process for quantifying the return, there's a lot of different approaches to this, but let's take a simple capital expenditure strategy. So when a company invests in anything, right? Before they invest in anything, there's always they always look at what the more like the risk adjusted return of that expenses. Okay. The first thing we do is we look at the industry average profits divided by the average compensation for that position. Now, the industry average profits and as well as the industry average compensation is usually available either on the Department of Labor's website, Department of the Department, the Census Bureau's website. They usually have most of this information on there. This will give a theoretical value of influence that a specific position has on our company's profits. The next thing, right? That's what it equals. The next thing we do is we go ahead and look at our projected financial statements, and we take a look at the profits that we anticipate annually over the next few years, and we multiply the annual number by the percentage of influence the specific position has on those profits. We now know how much money can be attributed, what the dollar value is that we can attribute to a specific position over the next few years. But this is all if the employee works at full productivity. The only thing left to do is calculate the risk to that profit, to the specific profit we can attribute to the employee, to that position. Okay, the process, for simplicity's sake, the process will be like this. Okay, what risk to the rate of full productivity is inherent in the employee? Okay, now we know that productivity is comprised of the intangible assets of knowledge, talent, and skill. Okay, those are the assets that are going to, those are the assets that are going to produce the the specific percentage of profits that's attributed to that employee. Okay, now let's assign on a scale of 1 to 100 anything and everything we can think of that might affect those three intangible assets from operating at full productivity. For example, employee satisfaction might affect those assets. Certain medical restrictions might affect those. In other words, if the employee doesn't have access to medical coverage, that might affect the rate to productivity. There are a lot of different things that can affect an employee an employee producing the full productivity that can come out of the intangible assets of knowledge, talent, and skill. Okay, once we determine the total risk to the rate of productivity, we multiply the annual profits divided. We multiply the annual profits by the percentage, the risk-reduced percentage of productivity we assume that employee can achieve. Okay, and then we multiply that, we compound that on an annual basis, and then we know the present value, the risk-adjusted present value of the employee. That's what the employee is worth in the company's bank account. Okay. Now again, we want to make sure that we're not over. In other words, if the employee is worth $100 to the company, okay, over the next few years, the total value of the employee, the total amount the employee will contribute to the company's bank account is $100, and we go and pay them a salary of let's say $50,000, and plus we give them a benefits package worth $100,000. So now the value that we're getting for the employee in our bank account is $100. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back. The employee's worth $100. We're gonna issue them a salary of $50 plus a benefits package that's worth $100. So for every so for the $100 that we get in our bank account, we're paying $150. Okay, that will not maximize the return on investment in employees. Okay, our company will definitely be operating at a loss. Again, we take the now let's figure out what the actual return on investment of the employees is. We take the present value of the employees. We take the present value of the hard and soft costs, right? Because we're going to do that on an annual basis, so we're going to take the present value, we want to know what it's, we want to discount it back to today's value, and then we divide it by the present value of total hard and soft costs. That gives us the return on investment in employees. Now that we know the return on investment in employees, we know we want to design, we know what the investment in employees is, we know all the tangible and intangible costs in employees, we know what the return on investment is, we know the quantified value of the intangible assets and the quantified value of the knowledge, talent, and skill. We want to maximize that return. Okay, so we need a product that's going to reduce the hard costs, reduce the soft costs, and reduce the risk rate. Reducing the hard costs would be instead of paying full out cash compensation, we'll pay cashless compensations. Reducing the soft costs would be either trying to reduce our turnover costs or trying to reduce absentee costs. And reducing the risk rate typically would involve reducing the risk to the rate of productivity. Reducing if employee satisfaction will reduce the rate of risk to productivity. We want to make sure we nip that in the bud. If an employee's lack of medical coverage will reduce the rate, will reduce the rate of productivity. If lack of coverage is a risk, we want to try to reduce that. By reducing these costs, this will be the first step that we take when trying to maximize the return on investment. That's why companies and agencies will offer benefits. That's why building relationships with employees maximizes the return on investment. That reduces the risk rate. Okay, that's how we'll go about designing the product. So what we need to do is we need to develop a product. We need to consider the value of the employee because we don't want to overpay. We need to build effective relationships with the employees, again, because we're trying to reduce some of the costs of some of the soft costs of absence of employee satisfaction. We're trying to reduce we're trying to reduce the risk rate. Next, we want to make sure the package will increase the return, not decrease the return. And finally, the package should enhance the bottom line. Basically, to sum it all up, there's really only two options. Either a benefits package can be a crippling cost to the agency, or a benefits package can maximize the return on investment. Now, let's just sum up what we covered. Okay, we first looked at some of the benefits basics. We looked at the legally required benefits, the optional benefits, and the perks that are offered. We looked at some of the basic health insurance benefits. We looked at alternatives for health cost containment, and then we looked at how to develop a benefits package. The bottom line is we need a package that will maximize the profits. Thanks so much, guys. Let's open up the lines for for question and answers.